This is Koralee, and you are listening to the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to yet another fantastic, blow your mind, not know what you're going to do next when you hear this wonderful, fantastic interview we have for you coming up on the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus. I've got Koralee on the line. Koralee is a fantastic singer-songwriter, and she's got a new record that's really just absolutely gorgeous, and I'm really excited to talk to her about it. But first, let's pay the light bill. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Positively Pittsburgh Live Magazine. That's pplmag.com, Pittsburgh's first internet radio, TV network, and online business community magazine. You want to go check that out. If you're a business and you're looking to get seen and heard, they get something like 8 million hits a month. It's a great place to sort of plant your flag and see what happens. I'd also like to thank MTS Management Group. MTS Management is more than just an artist management company. It's a bona fide rock star in the music industry, specializing in full-service artist management, publicity and promotion, social media campaigns. MTS Management is on the cutting edge of today's new music business. As I mentioned, we have a fantastic guest on the phone with us today, and but real quick before you get to that, if you like interviews and you're enjoying all this wonderful stuff we're doing, please check out our website, LoudiniRockandRollCircus.com, where you can hear replays of all the wonderful interviews we've done over the past year, and the great music cast. We do a podcast once a week. It comes out every Saturday, where we feature artists like Koralee. Koralee is an internet meme, has appeared on television in 24 countries as a Season 1 and 2 cast member of Namaste Yoga, and has voiced telephone systems all over North America. This is my first telephone system voicing person I've ever had on the podcast. She's been compared vocally to Sarah McLachlan and Joan Armatrading, just to name a few, but none of whom sound like each other, which speaks to the uniqueness of her sound. It's as if the listener hears exactly what they want to hear in her voice and in her songs. And she spent the last 3 years collaborating with Electrohouse and EDM producers in Los Angeles and Atlanta. Her most recent album, EP 2015, was a 101% crowdfunded. 101, so she exceeded her crowdfunding goal. So this is pretty amazing here. Produced in Los Angeles with Jan Linder-Koda, Matt Ross, and the legendary Marty Rifkin, and ships to supporters in early 2016. So the record, probably by this time this comes out, you guys are streaming it from our site. It's probably out. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Koralee, welcome to the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus. How are you?
I'm great, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Lou.
Okay, good. I'm glad that you're here. We're happy to have her here. Hopefully we won't chase her away. Koralee, tell us about yourself. How did you get started in music? What drew you to becoming a musician?
You know, there is a photo of me when I'm about 3 years old, and I've got a microphone in my hand that's attached to my father's tape recorder, and I am just giving her. And probably from the time I was very, very small, when I figured out that I could actually sing, I did it. And I sang a lot, so it was something I was always interested in, dance classes, etc. And when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I figured out that I could write songs. So I started writing these. I wish I could hear them. They're probably hilarious songs. While I was taking. There's one about going up and down a mountain that I remember, and I probably will never resurrect it. But while I was taking organ lessons, because that's the instrument that I studied, I just wrote songs here and there, but my major interest was acting. I started acting semi-professionally when I was 12 years old, and then moved from there. And music was always kind of a secondary thing because I was, doing plays. I did TV here and there. I did a lot of musicals, and then I suddenly went, wait, I can write my own songs, and I have written my own songs. So suddenly there I was, fronting kind of one of my first bands was a little bit of a heavy metal band, and then I went from there. And after doing that for a while, I decided to become a solo artist. So in 2008, I started doing my own shows, and was at the time signed to an independent record label in Seattle, and that's where it really all started.
What part of Canada are you from?
I grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, which is 3 hours north of Fargo, North Dakota, by car. And when you grow up in Winnipeg, you spend a lot of time going down to Fargo because it's a desired destination.
Okay. And so you did when you played in the band. So did you play in a band in Fargo, or was this like a little bit later on?
No, Lou, that takes a visa when you're Canadian. Actually, most of this happened after I moved to Vancouver, BC, so out on the West Coast. I started acting in Winnipeg, and I moved out to BC when I was about 18. So that's where the majority of it happened. But from Vancouver, I've performed in Seattle, all over California, of course back in Winnipeg because you got to go back to the hometown. And most of the music that I've produced, most of the shows that I've done have all been in California.
You have a very interesting style. Tell me a little bit about your influences, because everybody's got influences. So tell me a little bit about your influences.
So when I was growing up, I remember listening to my aunt's music collection, which consisted of a lot of Queen albums. I heard a lot of Beatles. I heard a lot of Eagles. I heard a lot of Led Zeppelin. And so that's the music I remember listening to as a child. And then when I started singing, I found myself singing along to a lot of Ella and Billie Holiday. So that was kind of my favorite thing to do, was just to sit in front of the stereo and sing along with what Ella was doing. You know, I mean, Ella is pretty much the most perfect singer on the planet as far as I'm concerned. And then as I was, discovering music for myself, I got really heavily into Peter Gabriel. Someone recently listened to one of my songs and said that it sounded a lot like early Peter Gabriel, and I got very, very excited.
Okay.
So now, there's my musical taste will change, from year to year. I'll be really, I'm the kind of person that picks a song that I like and I listen to it about 125 times, in like a day, and then I put it away. But in terms of I'm, still a huge Ella Fitzgerald fan. Nina Simone, of course. Betty LaVette is a favorite. Of course, I love Annie Lennox, and every once in a while I hear that I sound like her. I'm a big Scott Walker fan, and that's kind of everything that's coming up right now.
So how did you start? You said you play the organ. So would you take organ lessons as a kid or something, or how did that happen?
Organ lessons as a kid. Apparently, I was a very bad student.
Why? Why is that?
My older sister says that she remembers listening to my lessons, and I spent most of the time giggling and making jokes with my teacher, who was a very nice man, named Bruce. I have to tell you that I have a lot of interest in different instruments. I mean, I can kind of play the piano a little bit. I can kind of play the guitar a little bit. I can kind of play the bass a little bit, but I have mastery in none of them. So one of the things that I decided very early on was that I would leave the playing of the instruments to the people who could do it much, much better than I. So I'm really to have played with some really fantastic musicians in the live shows and in the studio work that I've done.
Well, I want to know all about that, but before we get to that, so with the songwriting, then you're just kind of like coming up with the melodies and singing them, and you're not really kind of like aware too much of like maybe what the chord structure is. You let the musicians work that out. Is that how you write?
So how I write is it sometimes comes out as just the lyrics, which I then add a melody to, or it comes out as a melody that I then add the lyrics to. If I'm lucky, it comes out all at one time. And then what I do, because I don't have any mastery and I don't have a lot of theoretical knowledge, I guess I'd say, about music, I do a lot of talking. I mean, there have been times when I basically sang the thing that I want to hear, or I pull a song that I've been listening into and say, hear the guitar, make it sound like that. Hear those drums.
Gotcha.
So with this album, with Matt Moss, who produced the tracks, we did a lot of that. There was a lot of me sending him MP3s and YouTube links and picking out bits and pieces, and God bless him, he was really, really awesome at helping me put it all together.
Yeah, let's start. Let's fly past your heavy metal organ days, and let's let's start with. So how many EPs? How many records do you have out?
So the one that I just produced is my second. I released my first EP in 2010.
Okay.
Part of that was funded by a grant from Factor Canada, which is an organization here in Canada that grants money to musicians to help them bring their projects to fruition. And that was part two of the songs were produced by a gentleman by the name of Elliot Sloan, who is better known as the lead singer of the band Blessed Union of Souls. And other songs were produced by myself and
oh, no, it's going worldwide, so you're screwed on that.
I'm gonna have to send her flowers. And with a label that I was involved with in the Seattle area, they produced the other, they helped me produce the other two songs. And when I say produce, and I think this will lead nicely into our conversation about crowdfunding, when I say produce, besides the money that I received from Factor, everything else was paid for by me. So everything that I've ever put out or released has been basically come out of the funds.
Well, you've had some interesting day jobs, and we kind of talked a little bit about that in your bio. No, it's interesting. Namaste Yoga. So that's a television series that takes people through like their yoga. Teaches people what yoga routines. That's a terrible word for it. It's not a routine. It's yoga practice.
It's a very serious practice, Lou. Namaste Yoga was a television series that I did. It was filmed actually way back in 2004. It was designed by a woman named Kate Potter, who is based in Vancouver. And it's essentially an instructional yoga television show, a 22-minute episode, and I appeared in seasons 1 and 2. And at the high point of the show, it was airing in 24 countries. And I mean, I had friends who were in India in 2008, and one of them sent me an email and said, "We were at the Ayurveda clinic today, and we saw you on TV." It was bizarre and wild to see that happen. So yeah, and so I mean, acting has definitely been one of my interesting day jobs. Absolutely. Let's skip forward. So
you've got this record that you're wrapping up here in 2015 and is coming out at the beginning of 2016. EP 2015, is that the title of it?
I'm calling it. I'm not really into the title. I know it just sounds kind of pretentious, but my last EP was just titled Koralee, and I'm kind of at the same place with this because each of the songs, there's definitely a thread. I mean, each of these songs are about love in one form or another, but I couldn't was happy with, so I just put a number on it.
Okay, all right. So it's like Chicago. Like just putting records out with their name on it, and people allow people to just number them.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't even think of a title. That's your problem. Just listen to the music and buy it. I don't care. So talk a little bit about. Tell me all about this record, because you've worked with some really talented people here, and this was a big deal because you actually had to go and get money for this. This wasn't just something you could just do on your own. You got other people involved. And talk to us. Why don't you start with that? Why don't we start with how, because you had to be funded, and you crowdfunded very successfully, by the way. Mm-hmm. So why don't you talk a little bit about that, and then take us into the making of the record?
Okay. So I had been basically producing one-offs. So I was working with an Electrohouse producer by the name of Glenn Weichert, who goes by the DJ name of Harafunk, and he and I had produced a number of songs together down in Los Angeles. I worked with a gentleman in Atlanta, and I was not satisfied. I had also produced a single of one of the songs that's actually been redone and is appearing on the new EP, and I was not really satisfied with the experience of just doing one song at a time, but unfortunately my resources were such that was all I was able to do. So I had been playing over the years a lot of shows live in Los Angeles, and that was where the majority of my resources were going, and it was definitely a valuable experience. I mean, I know you play live gigs, and some gigs are incredibly inspiring and wonderful, and some gigs you walk off stage going, "I just paid my dues." So I was actually finding, I was doing what are essentially house concerts and finding a lot of satisfaction with that, not only for me, but for the audience. But I had been playing these shows and working this material and also reworking material that I had previously recorded but not released. Was at this point, I distanced myself from my manager that I had worked with for a number of years, or we had just parted ways. It was certainly not any kind of animosity, just a difference in a difference of opinion in terms of direction. I was kind of thinking, what am I going to do? And I was talking to a good friend of mine who was a life coach essentially, and she said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, this is what I want to do, which is create an album." And she said, "Well, why don't you crowdfund?" And I went, "Oh my God, no, I can't ask people for money. I can't do that." So I had this internal dialogue that went on for probably about 6 months. And looking at it and doing a lot of research, looking at what other musicians had accomplished in terms of putting together a campaign, what they had shared, what they were offering, what they offered at the end in terms of the perks. And I thought, okay, I can do this. I can raise $5,000. So I went back to this friend and I said, okay, I'm going to raise $5,000. And she said, no, 10. And I went, oh, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. And part of being an artist for the majority of my life is that it really, and I think you probably also understand, it just requires risk. Like sometimes you just have to take a big risk, and sometimes you don't even know why. Or maybe I'm just speaking for myself there. Sometimes I don't understand why I'm taking the risk, but I thought, okay, fine, I'm going to raise $10,000, and I'm going to be able to do this album that I want to do. So like I said, I did a lot of research. I looked at what other people were doing, and I spent probably about a month compiling information, working on my perks, showing it to people, getting feedback, scripting my video, re-editing my video, and then suddenly after a month of work, I had this crowdfunding campaign that I was just doing, and it was just I was almost sick to my stomach the moment before I let it go live, because it was an all or nothing. I did mine on Indiegogo, and the difference with Indiegogo and the green one, what's the other one called?
Kickstarter.
Thank you. Between Kickstarter and Indiegogo is Indiegogo allows you to do something called flexible funding,
right?
Which you set a goal. If you don't meet that goal, you still get the money you've raised. You just pay a percentage in fees. And I thought, if I'm going to put the amount of effort that I know that I'm going to put into this campaign, and I don't make that money, I'm going to be really annoyed at somebody, that I didn't get in the end. So,
right.
So I chose Indiegogo, and I did end up raising, more than the $10,000. But when I had a number of things in place, and so this kind of speech that I did. One of the things that I read, that I watched on videos about crowdfunding, was that when you start a campaign, you don't do a campaign, put it out live, and say, hey, everybody, I'm doing a crowdfunding campaign. Months before you put it out there, you start talking to people. And you tell them that you're doing it. You ask them, what is it that you would like? What would you like to see? And I know that the obvious answer to what's a perk for a crowdfunding campaign is, well, the music, of course. But I want to see something that's maybe just a little bit more interesting. So one of the things that I did is I started painting about 3.5 years ago and found success with it, kind of out of dumb luck fairly quickly. And so now I'm an accomplished, selling painter. So one of the things I did is I offered paintings as a part of one of my packages. So it was just kind of an extra thing. Someone could get the digital version, someone could get the tangible version, as I call it, with a CD, and then for just a little bit more money, they would get a mini original Koralee. So I had spoken to about 20 people and said, I'm doing this crowdfunding campaign. I'm going to launch it on this day. And I was amazed on the first day how my friends, first of all, came through for me and were pledging about this campaign, pledging for the campaign and helping to promote it as well. And I made the choice to be very, very vocal about it. If you know me personally, I'm an incredibly private person. I don't do a lot of posting of my personal life on social media. I I barely even post pictures of myself unless they're live photos. It's just something that I don't do because I'm fairly introverted and not very comfortable with it. But I really had to go against my type, and I was on, no lie, in 40 days, which was the length of the campaign, Lou, I was on my computer for probably 35 of those days from the moment that I got up. I mean, I would break for meals and et cetera, until I went to bed. And what I was doing was every single time someone donated, and it was not an anonymous contribution, I was on social media writing them a personalized thank you. And it wasn't a, hey, Dave, thanks for the $20. It was me writing something about Dave that I knew. Now, I'm going to kind of jump back and forth here. So, ask any clarifying questions if you need to. But I used a service called Green Inbox. And what Green Inbox does is provides a bunch of different services for people to crowdfund. They do it for people who have little or no following. They do it for people who have a very public presence. They offer information, they offer support, they offer services. And in talking to them, one of the things they said to me was, you don't really have a huge following as an artist. So most likely, most of your funding is going to come from people that you know, someone that you've connected with at some point in your life. And they were absolutely correct. I would say that 90% of the funding I received from people that I knew. And I'm talking about people that there's a woman that contributed to my crowdfunding campaign that I have not seen or spoken to since the 7th grade. But because we're friends on Facebook, she saw my campaign and she donated $50. And that happened a lot. And so I heard from people that I hadn't heard from in years, people that I went to, like I said, elementary school with, to high school with, people that I worked at a gentleman that I worked with at a call center. And so with each of those people, I took the time to, because I'm also a writer, in addition to being a songwriter, to write personalized posts on Facebook about each of those people and how they impacted my life or touched my life in the past. And that was really effective because people saw that. They didn't just say that, hey, thanks, high five. They saw that I was, doing something that took some effort and some thought. And I got feedback from quite a number of people who said, one of the things that I really loved about your campaign is reading the stories that you wrote about people and posted. So I did that throughout the campaign. I did use a tool that Green Inbox offered, which I won't talk about because they don't offer anymore.
Okay.
But at the end of the campaign, I felt that I had made an impact on people. I felt that there was an impact that had been made upon me about how generous and supportive people are, about how people who are not artists love to support artists. They just find the process so fascinating. They think it's the most amazing thing because they don't do it. And I remember going to bed the night that the campaign closed at about, I think, $10,135 or something like that, thinking this is something incredible that I've accomplished. And I accomplished it with, I believe I had 167 funders.
Yeah, it wasn't like you had 10,000 people all sending you $1.
No.
Yeah. No. I was looking at it. I could see. Yeah, I was looking at how the spread was on that, and that was absolutely fascinating. So, what you did though was you really gave people, even through the crowdfunding process, you gave them an experience, if I may say that, if we could say that. You know what I mean? Like, they had the experience not just of, okay, so I helped this artist, but then you showed so much interest in them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really heavy. I mean, that's what people are, I think a lot of artists are missing, is that, like, really kind of like you have to kind of get to know people, and you've got to really kind of really show, you got to lift a little bit. You're a very private person, Koralee, but here you had to sort of like kind of open up.
Absolutely. And I had a lot of conversations while this was going on about just what art means to people and how people consume it and how they react to it. And songs that I have produced, I may like, but I may not think about. I worked with a gentleman in Los Angeles named David Bramstein, who also goes by the name of DJ Trusky. And we did a cover of the Stooges' Search and Destroy and turned it into this really kind of melodic electro track. And the same friend who said, don't do 5,000, do 10,000, who does not listen to music like that at all, when she heard that song, she went crazy. She thought it was the best thing that she had ever heard. And I thought it was, I thought it was great. I liked it. But I had to be really aware, or suddenly become really aware, that I was not doing this for me. I mean, yes, I have this urge and this desire to express this whatever lives within me that I'm coming up with, but that art exists for an audience. It can't just be about me, and it wouldn't just be about me. If it was, then the question is kind of moot. But realizing that people loved what I was doing, and then accepting that and relishing that and reveling in that and being incredibly grateful for that really changed my outlook this year on how I look at my music and how I promote my own music.
Who worked with you on the once we get to now that we've got it funded, who worked with you on the EP? Go through that one more time. I'm not sure if we covered all that.
I don't think we did. So
okay.
About 2 years ago this November, I went to a conference in Los Angeles put on by an organization named Taxi. And Taxi calls themselves an independent A&R company. But they do a conference every year in November in Los Angeles where independent musicians come, and they can take all sorts of workshops and seminars about aspects of the music industry. But I went there with a writing partner, and I'd done some research before I went, and I found this woman on their website who was one of the mentors named Jan Linder-Koda. And I kind of looked at this woman, and I thought, I got to meet this woman. So, and I mean, as you know, the music industry is a sausage party. And that's not necessarily always a bad thing, but when I'm at these conferences, I look around and I'm like, well, there's me, and there's another woman across the room. And so as much as, my bands have always been all guys, I'm ashamed to say, but that's just how it's worked out. But I thought, I need someone to work with to develop my sound, and of course, as a singer, I always need to work with a vocal coach and exercise my tool. And so I found this woman, and I walked up to her in this crowded ballroom, and I said, I've been looking for you. And she looked at me like, who the hell is this person? And we developed this really fantastic relationship. I started working with her as a vocal student. And what she specializes in, though, even though she has a magnificent background in theory and performance herself, is she does artist development. I can't even tell you how she does it. I think she does it very intuitively with each person. But she works with you, or she worked with me, to bring out a more rounded and more fulfilled version of what I was doing as a musician. So the production between the EP that I put out in 2010 and the EP that I'm working and almost finished the manufacturing process with now, some wonderful things about that first EP. And I actually had a fan who had remaining copies in the world a few weeks ago and sent me a picture of it. And I was like, I didn't even know it was still out there. But it's a world of difference. And I owe a lot of that to Jan and her support and her working through and with the songs alongside of me. So she brought me to Matt Moss, who did all of the track production, and she also brought me to a gentleman named Marty Rifkin, whose studio we recorded all of the vocals in Santa Monica. And strangely enough, I'd actually met Marty 4 years prior, walked into his studio with a friend of mine and had a conversation with him about being a musician, being a vocalist, and we talked about, maybe we'll work together one day. And 4 years later, I walked into his studio and we recorded all of the vocals for this EP. So Marty's background is incredible. I mean, he is a member. He's been playing live with Bruce Springsteen and in the studio for years. He's worked with Glenn Campbell. He plays with Tom Petty. He's worked with Joel. I mean, anyone that you can think of, Marty's probably worked with them, and he's one of the most accomplished session musicians I've ever met. But as a producer, he is something else. And so he and Jan have worked together for about 25 years, and having the two of them, with me through the process of recording vocals was magic. It was absolutely awesome.
So Jan Linder-Koda, Matt Moss, and Marty Rifkin are the sort of the people behind the scenes, the main people behind the scenes for your latest record.
Mm-hmm.
That's fantastic. I can't wait for it to come out. It's really, really awesome. You have to be really excited. So what are you going to do? Are you going to tour, or what's going to come up after the record comes out?
I am actually really excited about getting back to doing some live performing. So I'm looking at the ramifications of touring. The EP is already in the hands of a couple of people who may be wanting to assist in some way with the distribution and with working with me as a solo artist. So I'll just say that. But definitely, it's time to get back. It's time to get back out on stage with this material. So I'm very, very excited about that.
Okay, sounds really exciting. It does. It sounds really cool. I wish you could tell me though that you were hitting the road in April or something. That you'll just have to get back in touch with us and keep us informed with what you have going on.
I will definitely do that.
What can fans do? People that are listening to this, what can they do? Can they go to your website? How can people find out what you're doing?
Okay, so what's happening with this EP is that it's first going to the people who supported the crowdfunding campaign. So until it's in their hands, the EP is not actually technically officially released. Come the new year, so come January, everything that you need to know about me, whether it be music, whether it be my paintings, whether it be my writing, everything's at Koralee.com. So that's KORALEE.com.
Well, there you have it, Koralee.com. But you got to wait till first of the year.
You got it.
Yeah, because I was checking it out right now. It's just like this. Well, it's absolutely wonderful photo. Who did that photo?
That photo was done by a woman from Picard who lives out on the Sunshine Coast of British Columbia up here in Canada. And I was looking at some of her other photos. I wanted something that was very striking, but also had an element of almost unrealness to it. And so we went out onto the beach with a piece of silk, and I know I look very comfortable, but it was October. And by the end of the shoot, I was pretty cold, but she did a really wonderful job, I think, of capturing me and elements of my personality, and also, capturing like a visual representation of the woman who is singing on this album.
Do you become a different person when you perform?
A little bit. When I talk about being an introvert, it's interesting because when I get up on stage, I'm really, really comfortable there, and I was in Vegas in 2014, and I was doing shows there, and I was doing this little kind of cabaret night, and I got up on stage and just had this really beautiful conversation with the audience. And because one of the things I know about my songs and about my paintings is that there's meaning there for me, but there's always a meaning that is taken by the listener or the consumer. And so, I sang a song about probably not one of my finer moments when I had an affair a number of years ago, and I sang the song, and it opened up this whole dialogue about relationships with the people who were in the audience, and it was really quite fantastic. So I find that it's just so easy, when I sing these songs and have people listen, it's so easy for people to connect to me, and I find out so much about them. And there's a thing here, I know you must know this though, because you're up on stage and you see that from that side. Like you watch people, listen to and consume what you're doing.
Right.
I did a show in Vancouver, and an old high school friend of mine came, and he spent the whole time with his, he had his elbow on his knee and his hand leaning on his fist, and he had this strange look on his face, and I kept looking at him going, oh my God, oh my God, he hates it. He thinks this is terrible. And he came up to me after and he said, that was amazing. I have 2 friends in Seattle. I know you're playing there next week. I never know what's going on for people.
Yeah, well, it seems to me the theme here for you is that music is really the way that you are really connecting with people. Now, through the with the crowdfunding, that was related to your music, and you were able to kind of really dig deep with folks, and when you perform on stage and through the whole process here. So I think that's what's going on with us a lot of times as musicians, is that's our way to sort of reach out and have people reach back too.
Yeah.
It's a really beautiful thing. That is Koralee.com. Koralee is going to hang on for a minute because we are going to create a little bonus feature for you guys, but you're going to have to do something to get it. We'll figure that out later. So we're going to get juicy here next. Guys, you've been listening to the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus. I'd like to thank Koralee for hanging out with us today. That's Koralee.com. That record is going to hit first of the year, probably about the time this comes out. Go to Koralee.com. Like one more time, thank our sponsors, MTS Management Group. That is MTSManagementGroup.com, and Positively Pittsburgh Live Magazine.com. You can catch up on what's going on with the Loudini Rock and Roll Circus at LoudiniRockandRollCircus.com. If you like interviews like this, you definitely want to go there, check it up, subscribe. And you can also hear our music podcast, which comes out every Saturday, where we feature the actual music of these amazing artists, and they give you a little more details. Thanks, guys, so much for listening. And once again, that is Koralee.com and LoudiniRockandRollCircus.com. We'll see you guys on the next podcast.